It's the Redbird Reboot podcast. Are you ready to get rebooted, Cardinals fans? He settles down, at least in the zone, and does not stop running.
Blake Murphy.
This is the identity for the Arizona Cardinals.
The run defense is just horrendous, and it's been horrendous for the Cardinals for a long time.
And Marcos Labrada.
He's going to bring over his philosophy. It should make it better.
Present the hottest NFL podcast from the country's hottest state.
He should be turning around the logo.
Actually, some breaking news we can cover here. This popped up just about, 6 minutes ago.
It's Redbird Reboot.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans. Welcome into the Redbird Reboot podcast. We're super excited to have you guys in here on a Wednesday evening. We're going to be talking some Arizona Cardinals football. We're going to be talking a bit about the Packers game, going over some film, and we're going to be focusing a little bit on where does the team go from here? What are some of these post-bye week changes that we expect to see for the team? What are some post-bye week changes that they could make? As always, we got your two co-hosts here. I'm Blake Murphy, and that on the other side is at Pancake Soul, Marcos Labrada. Marcos, after the Packers game was finished and the Cardinals lost their fifth game in a row, they've now lost, I believe, 5 straight games by a total of 13 points. How do you feel a couple days removed from the Cardinals' latest loss?
Sorry, I had my thing on mute. It's just the same story every single week with us just losing by a field goal or being down by 4 points. It always seems to be 4 points that we're down, and we have to be able to just score a touchdown to be able to do anything. We can't tie the game because they're up by 4. We have to go 4 downs, and of course you've seen what happened the very last game with there not being adjustments for helping out someone like Jonah Williams on the right side when Micah Parsons was just he probably had a career game. I'm sure he had a better game in his entire career, but this was pretty close to being a very dominant game for him, and he was coming into this game with 1 sack, so I don't feel really good about the adjustments at all.
No, it feels like the Cardinals, after watching the last game that we got to see, that they really struggled in being able to have a game plan that was able to take Micah Parsons out of the game. One of the things that I felt like personally after watching the film was that there was multiple times that they seemed to have protection that was available. The Packers moved Micah Parsons around, started off against Paris Johnson Jr., no go there. They moved him over to the right side. And there was a bit too many times where it felt like there was a gotta have it down in distance that Parsons ended up lining up against the Arizona Cardinals and right tackle Jonah Williams. I know we talked about it a little bit on the last show, but it feels like we probably could be either seeing one of two things happen with the Cardinals. Either A, they prefer Jonah Williams as a run blocker, and they're going to be willing, come hell or high water, to put him in those one-on-one situations because they need to be able to have that threat for the run game. Or I think that what we could potentially see is a shift where we end up seeing the likes of their current swing tackle, Kelvin Beachum, becomes their right tackle that would move to a backup position, or what we've seen kind of currently, in order to get some extra blocking, they've used Kelvin Beachum as a blocking tight end on some of these different plays. That could potentially be Jonah Williams. I think when we look back at the Steve Wilkes era, Marcos, there were guys who got cut, guys who got benched. That was part of the whole accountability thing that they had for the Arizona Cardinals. And in a losing season, I think you have to have accountability. One of the moves I think that we can talk about a little bit as we go over some of the sacks would be seeing how Micah Parsons wrecked the Arizona Cardinals. I think that there should be some accountability coming for Jonah Williams, whether or not he's deserved that because of the player that he is. But I do think that what we've seen is that there is a better pass protector on the roster, and it's Kelvin Beachum.
Yeah, well, we've seen him. So I keep bringing this up because of the fact that it's not that I'm taking a victory lap on the whole Jonah Williams thing, but we kind of got some warning about what Jonah Williams was before we brought him over and gave him that contract. I didn't feel very good with him when we first signed him. There was talks about is he going to be our next left tackle? Because at that point, Paris Johnson was our right tackle. We didn't know what was going to go on with DJ Humphries. Subsequently, he was released that same offseason. So then the idea was, okay, what are we going to do? Are we keeping Paris Johnson on the right tackle spot and putting Jonah Williams on the left tackle? Or are we going to switch him over? Well, they made the right decision and putting Paris Johnson in his natural spot at left tackle, which I felt like we should have done since we drafted him, just to be able to give him those reps at the left tackle position. But, it is what it is. Jonah Williams went to the right tackle position. I didn't really feel good about that. I kept telling myself, why the heck did we have to release somebody like trade Josh Jones for a 6th-round pick? You could have kept him on the roster, regardless of what happened to him going on from his career. He did show he can hold down the left tackle position. It wasn't every single week we were chanting about like how we are with Jonah Williams, like, hey, we got to get rid of this guy. We got to get rid of Josh Jones. Josh Jones, we need to bench him. We need to do this. Didn't hear that game by game because that was a natural position. Josh Jones was a person who was rated as a 1B 1st-round pick. We got lucky and got him in the 3rd round. We gave him some time to be able to like kind of settle in. We played him at guard. Wasn't a natural guard. And when he had that position at left tackle and he showed what he could have, they put him at right tackle preseason. He was dominating, shipped him off. And I was so disappointed in that move because think about like the bookend tackles you have with both Paris Johnson and Josh Jones. Maybe he gets injured, but you still have Kelvin Beachum on the roster.
And it was a cheaper move that they could have made. I think the Cardinals, they took a look and saw that they did not see him as a starting caliber guard, or I should say, starting caliber offensive tackle. They tried him at guard for even a little while. As far as it goes to with the Seahawks, and when you're looking at their depth chart, Josh Jones he has not been as healthy this season. There was a few games that he was ruled out of as an inactive. He hasn't gotten onto the field yet. Part of it is because of the 2 successful draft picks that the Seahawks have made, and Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas have both been healthy. Jones, I think what you're talking about is fundamentally going back to the 2024 NFL draft. Cardinals had a decision to make. They had Marvin Harrison Jr. on their board. They also had Joe Alt on their board. Alt, at least, has been injured. He's going to be potentially coming back within the next few weeks for the Los Angeles Chargers. But the Chargers kind of made an opposite move that the Cardinals did. They took the offensive lineman first, got a starting potential future star in Joe Alt. He's looked fantastic through his rookie season. And then in the 2nd round, they went and got Ladd McConkey. Now, McConkey has looked very different from this year than last year because of the way that things have gone. He had 100 yards and 7 catches against the Dolphins, has about 380 yards on 37 catches, meaning he's only getting about 10 or so yards per catch for the most part. Meanwhile, when we're looking at Marvin Harrison Jr. with his stats, he's at 396 on only 24 catches. So he's actually been a bit more of a deep threat. Chargers have been passing the ball a lot without a good offensive line because they lost Rashawn Slater to injury. I think a lot of Cardinals fans have wondered, should they have taken Joe Alt back in that draft? And I would say, if you believe in Drew Petzing and that the Cardinals had a run-first offense and we're going to be getting the ball consistently to their tight end and their running backs as 1A and 1B, get the ball to Trey McBride, get the ball to your running back out of the backfield, that's not too bad ultimately as far as an identity to have. Do you think the Cardinals had buyer's remorse potentially on the moves that they did make by taking Marvin Harrison Jr. and, as we've talked about, not taking an offensive tackle in the 2024 draft, but taking Darius Robinson, who, granted, did have probably one of his better games on Sunday. He had 3 tackles. We'll take a look at some of those at least as far as being able to get some pressures. I think it was actually, I'll have to double check his tackles outside just to make sure that number is correct. But it's one of those places where the Cardinals, a lot of people have started questioning if Monty Ossenfort is going to be the guy or not following some of these draft picks and draft choices.
Well, Monty Ossenfort is going to, and I hope this is the way we're going to go. It's not going to be a situation where you fire both the head coach and the general manager. Now, I'm very critical about like a few things with Monty Ossenfort, but I don't want to fire him. The other reason why I don't want to fire him is because I think he's been swayed to take certain picks, or like he's been kind of like nudged by like his owner and maybe by other players on the roster, Kyler Murray, with Paris Johnson. For that one, we can undeniably say that was somebody that he did want. So then they went ahead and moved back up to be able to get him, to be able to trade for those picks. We heard the story and whatnot. And Marvin Harrison Jr., that was another pick that was like, I wouldn't say so much swayed, but they feels like they came to him, or they had a discussion with him, and Kyler Murray was thinking to himself, well, I need that big guy, that big X receiver, and we have him at the number 4 spot if the first 3 picks are quarterbacks. And you know what? If that's what he wanted, or if that was going to lead to a success, and I was pushing for that as well, because I thought to myself, if Kyler Murray is your guy, get him a big target, get him somebody with great hands, get him somebody who can get up and get it, get him somebody who's going to help him succeed. And it's not just about you have Michael Wilson, but you also have somebody else that's a big get up and get it target, and that'll lead for Kyler Murray to be able to put up those great numbers down the line and have success. And of course, we have 2 years to be able to say it hasn't worked out that way.
Yeah, a lot of it has been questions about Marvin Harrison Jr. Is it that he hasn't gotten the targets that's been needed? Is it the offense? How much of it is we've seen mistakes that have popped up with Kyler and with Marv as far as just not being able to necessarily get open at times his rookie year. And then this season, we've seen them not be necessarily on the same page. That's something that is very interesting that we'll have to watch, but it's one of the spots of looking through Monty Austinfort's draft class. Before we get to talking a bit about the draft, I do want to point out, at least, it wasn't just a Jonah Williams day. There was another victim that did end up happening, at least in the Arizona Cardinals game. We did end up having the likes of one Paris Johnson did get beat for a sack. We'll be able to kind of show some of that here on the screen in just a second for you guys, but it is something that is very interesting when you take a look at the way he was beat, because it's pretty standard as it comes to, you'll watch kind of the outside move. This is going to be a lineup with Micah Parsons on the one side, Jacoby Brissett. This is going to be one of those. Let me take a look at the pass move that he has here. This kind of starts off as a bull rush, and he kind of it doesn't move into a swim move. Swim move, you kind of go up and over the top for the most part. This is just a pretty deep drop that Brissett is taking. This is the spot where he would want to step up a little bit into the pocket. He does, but Micah just bends around Paris like he isn't even there, which is kind of crazy as far as with that athleticism. Part of why he's one of the best pass rushers in the National Football League.
Yeah, I mean that would have been a dream to go get him in the 2021 draft, when we could have selected him and we got Zaven Collins. And they're not going to play Zaven Collins at the inside linebacker position. They're just going to play him on the outside. They think they're going to replicate what Micah Parsons was going to do, but Micah Parsons is a freak. And had he dropped to the Cardinals, I think we can undeniably say that they were going to select him. But would he have turned out the way he would have turned out? That's another question.
Well, I know also John Gambadoro from Arizona Sports said the Cardinals didn't like Micah Parsons that year, and probably because they liked Zaven Collins. Yeah, exactly. And this again, Marcos, this is part of where I liked Micah Parsons that year. I wasn't sure where he would put, but I looked at him the same way that I looked at Hassan Reddick, coming out of as a super athletic, gets tackles for loss, a guy that can line up and the edge, or in other different places, just put him as a pass rusher, let him work. It's part of why Steve Keim and the evaluation process we saw of the Arizona Cardinals was a flawed evaluation process that did not get there, because how can you take a look at someone like this who's able to have that much, at least on the outside, and then just be able to, you can see him kind of be able to draw a little bit of the inside, just gets the leverage, is able to get that sack. The other 2 sacks that came were a bit later. This one is, I believe, with about 9:50 or so left in the game. You can see at least Micah Parsons now lined up on the right-hand side over there. All of these, you'll notice, are in the red zone, which is very interesting. Yep, empty formation, at least there. That one is just, this to me is one of those sacks that when I saw it for the first time, I thought, they're hurrying up. They have to get the ball out. No one is open. Mike is right there. Jacoby is going to be having to throw this ball under duress. The intended target Trey McBride is taken. They're just playing a pretty simple man coverage across the top. The one guy who is going to eventually get open, you're going to see, is Marvin Harrison Jr. inside. This is one of those places where when you're talking about how this play went, there should have been the ability to say, hey, you know what? You got Trey McBride out here. You're splitting out 5 wide. Micah Parsons is there. Green Bay is going to be able to get pressure with rushing just 4 guys. You're going to have to adjust and take your running back over here. He's going to have to come in and be able to chip. You just can't leave Micah one-on-one like that in this sort of a situation. Cardinals are going for the end zone, and you end up with a long sack with the offensive line. You can see Jonah puts his head above his hands. He seemed to think that. Exactly. Let's take a look a little bit more at that with the technique. So this is the biggest difference, I think, between the Cardinals defense and the Packers defense is look at the penetration right there. You got the nose tackle, who I think is, 94 for the Packers. He's able just to use a pretty quick swim move. So watch how he goes from starting on the outside shoulder and then moves to the inside shoulder at least and just swims past. That's a swim move. That is an actual pass rush move technique that defensive linemen and edge rushers are taught to do. He just beats Evan Brown one-on-one, who hasn't been nearly as impressive this year. And then on the other side, when you're taking a look at for where you can step up, absolutely nowhere to go for Brissett. The offensive line this year, it's not to say that it's been a problem, but it does seem like, at least Marcos, the Cardinals probably should have spent more than a 6th round pick. That was a 9-yard play, at least for the most part. That was sacked, at least with the Jacoby Brissett, that basically pushed the Cardinals back. And I believe that they ended up having to settle in this regard. Ultimately, either it was for a field goal or that was, I believe, the final sack of the game. That was in 32 seconds left. That effectively, after the Hail Mary on the very next play, I think it was actually 2 plays from there at the Green Bay. They went back to the 34-yard line. 2 plays from there, Cardinals threw up essentially a Hail Mary pass because they couldn't move forward. Poor clock management. I'm going to pull up a little bit of what we're going to be able to see there as far as later in the game, but it just was very, very difficult for me to be able to understand Drew Petzing's the ability for them to get through that part of the game without actually recognizing. So it's 2nd and 19. They were able to get back down to 3rd and 11, but then 4th and 11, they just Hail Mary it. They didn't even try to get the ball closer to be able to pick up. They could pick up a first down. Part of it, of course, was having
the time.
Well, they didn't have, I think, the time on, as like we talked about, some of those timeouts with Jonathan Gannon went back into the locker room with him were not used, which is unfortunate because...
no, I mean on the drop, I think they thought they weren't going to be able to buy enough time for him to like get like a concept open closer to what they need to do. That push-pull technique, by the way, that Micah Parsons used on that last pass rush move, that was set up because... Jonah Williams decided to jump set on that one, which is it's a lot of hubris for a player to think you can jump set versus a elite pass rusher and think that you're gonna win that rep. You're not gonna win that rep if you do that. You have to gain depth, not go towards him.
Yeah, and that's something at least where the just the way that things turned out for the Arizona Cardinals, I think in this game, it was just a referendum on what we've seen through a lot of the season, which is I think this coaching staff is in over their head, unfortunately. As far as when they have not been able to run the ball effectively, they're now in this heavy spread out passing offense. It's not comfortable for them. They're having to kind of be able to now recognize that these end of game, end of script situations, they're having the capacity to be able to get back into the game. And they're really struggling, I think, Marcos, in being able to actually fundamentally struggling to close out games.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it has to do with like the minor stuff, like the fact that they got to the line of scrimmage and didn't call a timeout, but decided to run a play and then call a timeout. That was a waste, and they bit him in the butt on the very next play when you gave up that sack, or you had that sack by the fact that you didn't think that, like, hey, and gotta have it like down or at least close to the line of scrimmage. We need to send some help going towards Jonah Williams' way. We cannot get a sack, or we cannot give up a sack to Micah Parsons. And they just went empty and just gave him, put him out there one-on-one.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, at least fundamentally, for that to be the case there. Let's talk a little bit here, Marcos, with some of the positives that we saw with the Arizona Cardinals, because the deep passing game definitely still stayed in, and it was still good to be able to watch. I do think that with Arizona, we were able to at least see that with Jacoby Brissett in tow, when the pass protection has been able to hold up well enough, they've been able to actually have a passing game that's been a little bit different from with the Arizona Cardinals. I've been very impressed with just the way that we've been able to see some of their deep passing plays be able to actually be something different. We haven't seen some of this with the Arizona Cardinals offense under Kyler Murray of being able to have a deep passing game necessarily. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for those of you watching online, so you'll be able to at least see what we have with the let me go ahead here and swap our camera out so you guys can see. But this is one of the first passing plays that we had. This is the Marvin Harrison Jr. deep pass that we got to see. I believe this was with about 6 minutes left in the second half. Deep passing play action. Fake, this is exactly what you drafted Marvin for. You got a safety that's over the top here that's going to have to run back over. Second safety's coming down on Trey McBride's in that double coverage. He knows he's got Marvin. The offensive line does a great job of picking up just 4, rush 4, drop 7. You got multiple options to go to on 3rd and long. Jacoby just recognizes, hey, Marvin's going to be quickly flipping his hips, getting back around and getting out of bounds, picking up a 3rd and long pass play on that. Just one of those things we've been waiting to see from Marv. He ended up, I believe, with only 2 catches on the day, of course. They just did not target him as much as they targeted Zay Jones, but he did have 58 receiving yards on the day.
On 2 receptions.
Yeah, and with his current progress, so right now Marvin's at almost 400 yards on the season through the first 7 games. So if you're going to take a look at what he's going to have to average in order to get to 1,000 yards the rest of this season, he is going to be, excuse me, let me just do the quick math here for that. It's going to be 1,000 yards, and he's averaging about 57 receiving yards a game. So you're talking about, in a 17-game schedule, he's going to get to 1,000 yards. Now, I think part of that is we still have a bit of disappointment, Marcos, in how that's turned out. As Trey McBride there, we see the ball goes off of his hands and another deep passing play. A lot of people hope that Marv would be a 1,200 yards a season receiving guy, just straight from the get-go. Not having to worry about that, not having to have any of the struggles that we had seen, at least as a rookie. But with him being able to get to 1,000 yards this season with averaging 57 yards a game, it seems very likely that he's going to be able to get there, which is great. We're also seeing at least Trey McBride being used in the red zone, such as on this play that you can see on screen. Trey ends up getting a step at least over the top, and he takes a little quick stutter step to have to kind of come back a little bit to the ball. If that's placed over his forward shoulder versus having to jump back and turn his body back around, I think that's a touchdown.
Yeah, and unfortunately it did hit his hands, but still, like, you could have made it easier on your receiver and stuff. That last play, by the way, that out route versus cover 3, that should be automatic. Like, I thought that was gonna be the case with Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr., that they were gonna keep connecting on that. But it felt so good to see that connection and then not bringing it back again after that. Kind of sucks.
I agree with you, at least here. This is one of the spots where, like you said, defender just gets his hands up, gets just enough play on the ball, moves through the motion. This is one of those places where people say, how is that not pass interference? Well, when it's defensive pass interference, there's 2 ways. That one is if you get there too early, and then the second is if you're not looking for the ball, you get there too early. But this is just great defensive coverage here by the linebacker, carrying McBride up the seam. You can see when Trey goes back up, he's watching the player for where watching the ball is, and then he follows through and knowing when the catch is going to be there to be able to knock the ball free, just having some great hands to swat that away. Just absolutely nothing you can do about that. Quay Walker's down there just looking on as he makes the play. This is one of the other deep passing attempts that we got to see from Jacoby Brissett. This is the big one that we got to see. This is the one that set up the Cardinals pretty well. A 43-yard pass play, longest pass play on the day to Zay Jones. You notice the man coming in motion down over. This is something that we talked about last year. We did not see with Kyler Murray in that offense. You would see you got Elijah Higgins back here. You've got your running back and Michael Carter, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Trey McBride. You motion one guy from left to right, and notice what the defense does on this play, Marcos, when Zay Jones, he lines up on the one side. You got the man defending him over on the top. Notice what happens.
They shift over.
But no one moves with him. No one moves with him. You can tell it's not man coverage. It's going to be zone coverage, at least for that. So you can see now they know that they're running zone. He just goes and runs out to the sideline. And then look, because they're running zone, guess what? He just hits it right in between the zones. So you see you got a zone right here that's going to be played, the other zone by the safety. Zay just runs right in between the 2 zones because this guy, when you're watching him, he's not in man coverage. He's having to watch to be able to make sure, because right now you got a guy out of the backfield. If he goes with Zay Jones and then you just simply check the ball down, all of a sudden that's going to be a huge run for him to be able to get with absolutely no defenders there for the most part. So he's got to stay on his guy. He misreads and is looking down underneath, kind of gets his eyes caught upfield. So Zay just kind of runs behind him. He's expecting the safety to be able just to be handed off, and instead Jacoby just mails that thing perfectly and overthrows pretty much everyone except for Zay Jones for that first down. They pick up 43 yards on the play. It was essentially also a free play because you had a defensive offsides on Sorrell, who I think we'll get to see him jump offsides here in just a quick second. But it was essentially a free play.
He beats the
There he
half
is.
deep
Yep.
safety on that cover 2 call, so he hits that whole shot that we always constantly hear about.
And something also too, I think this is something when we talk about, is there a quarterback controversy? We've seen a couple of times with Kyler Murray. He gets the ball, it's an offsides, it's a free play. He'll take the ball, try to look for a deep shot, doesn't quite see it, takes off. Jacoby goes through the progression, reads, recognizes where he's going to be between the two things in the zone, throws the ball down, and just is able to hit Zay. Great play by the defender for almost getting in the way of being able to break up that pass, but he's able to see right
He
there.
did a
You're
bad
like,
job.
he jumped a little bit early, but again, he just got beat. Like, that's just how it goes sometimes. This ball is also placed perfectly. If it's a little bit too close in front, he can jump in front of the ball, be able to break it up. He plays it great. One of those things in the deep passing game being here, why Jacoby almost got to 300 yards. That's something that is super impressive, I think, at least, that we've been able to see, is this deep passing game coming alive for the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, well, I've mentioned before, of course, that there's plays to be made down the field, and he. This is what the impressive thing was, and I think I told somebody on Twitter that they were really taking away the outside stuff when they first played the Colts, and you saw more deep shots over the middle. And now, because they knew Jacoby Brissett was most likely to start, they started focusing more over the middle,
Yep.
so he had the stuff outside the numbers.
Yep. And this, speaking of outside the numbers, just a beautiful outside the numbers thing from Marvin Harrison Jr. here. This is what we were expecting and wanting his rookie season. So he starts off at the line, gets a good release, goes up shoulder, and then he just, when you're in this spot, last year's Marv would have gotten locked up, would have had issues. You look at him this year, he basically continues to run outstretched and then goes up, puts his hands on the ball using the high hands, doesn't cradle that into his body. It just shows, at least when it comes to how they're playing, Marv can beat guys over the top like this, like because of that height, because of just the way that he's able to get releases. Even when it looks like in this situation, you're like, hey, is Marv covered? Guess what? Throw the ball over the top. He uncovers himself, goes up, and is able to get the ball. And you can see at least that grin that he's got with.
He's happy.
He knows and understands exactly that that's how he's supposed to be utilized. So when the Packers are not going to leave a safety threat up on the outside like that, Jacoby sees that. He's able to take advantage of it. It's part of why, Marcos, when we're talking about it, we'll kind of we'll leave it up to a discussion or a vote, at least, that we'll have for our viewers of who should get the start out of the bye week for the Arizona Cardinals. But I really wanted to at least focus back in on what we've seen with Jacoby. For a lot of people has been eye-opening. We've also seen some issues because the lack of athleticism that we've seen, where Jacoby can take off, he can run, but he doesn't have the same athleticism, I think, as Kyler Murray to be able to make some of these broken plays happen. It's part of where I think we've seen in the last game, Jacoby Brissett took 6 sacks overall. Now, when it's talking about the Cardinals and how their offense works, they're not an offense that can afford to take a whole lot of sacks. What we've seen with this year, for the most part, with Kyler Murray, he took 6 sacks against the Seattle Seahawks. He took 5 against the New Orleans Saints. But in the games that the Cardinals did win this year against the Saints, they got up pretty early. He ended up taking a couple of sacks. But he had 1 sack for 9 yards against the Panthers. And the game that they should have probably won against the Niners, took a single sack. Against the Titans, he took 3 sacks. And one of those, I think, was, we saw the presence of Jeffrey Simmons make his way known. But we got to see rushing yards from Kyler Murray. He averaged about 38, 32, 37, 41. He carried the ball multiple times and was able to pick up probably an extra 30 to 40 yards on the ground. So whenever we talk about passing yards and talk about quarterback styles, one of the things you got to remember is, yeah, sure, Kyler's only throwing for 220 yards, but he's going to be running for an extra 32. He's going to be hitting that 250 yards mark pretty much week in and week out. It's just going to be that he's going to do it with a lot of it on the ground. Jacoby Brissett, on the other hand, he had 1 rush, I think at least, that got about 12 yards or so, but then the rest of the time, because of his sacks, against Green Bay, he had 6 attempts. It was his most rushes that he's taken. He had, I believe it was 3 rushes for 19 yards and 6 for 26 yards, but the sack numbers at least went up. He had 43 yards were lost on sacks against the Packers, just a much better pass rush. I think that the running ability of Kyler Murray is part of why you take a look at the Dallas Cowboys and you say, all right, Kyler, you get your shot. We want to see the passing yards increase so you can get up to probably about 250 passing yards while keeping those rushing yards in tow with about 30 to 40 rushing yards or so. I think that's the key for the Cardinals. What we have not seen so far, Marcos, is Kyler Murray running the ball in the second half. And with having a midfoot sprain, if Kyler's not going to be fully healed from that, I don't know if we're going to see exactly this Cardinals offense as we were expecting to see this year, with Kyler running the ball consistently and being able to get 250 or so passing yards.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure how many times we actually call design runs with Kyler Murray, but a lot of those yards, of course, are a lot of them are scrambles and stuff, and he takes those scrambles because he either sees man coverage and he might not look what he's seeing downfield. He sees their backs turned towards him, so he goes ahead and takes whatever yards he can. Um, but when they're running the type of runs that they're calling for Kyler Murray, and it's been like this since his entire career. It hasn't just been like this with Drew Petzing. Has been like this with Cliff Kingsbury as well. They like to run what is considered crash concepts, with the quarterback being in the pistol, handing the ball off, reading the edge defender and whatnot. Well, they're starting to catch up to that because of the fact that they want to use a pinch and I think it's a pinch. I forgot what the technique of it is, but basically they're just trying to take pretend like they're going to take the running back, keeping their legs squared, and then going after the quarterback right after that. And that's the reason why you're not seeing many yardage with that. You did see it one time last year against the 49ers when he scored a touchdown off of that same type of concept. So yeah, when a defender does crash to take the running back out of the way, I mean, you can get a big explosive play like that. But they're starting to catch on to like how to defend Kyler Murray with that. I would love to see more bash concepts where the running back's already in motion, running across the formation. Kyler Murray has it in the shotgun, decides whether he's going to hand it off or what he's going to take it, and it runs between the obviously the attack zone is the B gap, and it's a power play. So basically, you have a pulling guard and you have a kick out block, and the pulling guard's the lead blocker. That means he follows them through the gap and takes whatever he can. He could even slide if he wants to before he even gets any contact. You can get some good yards off of that, but they don't want to. Well, I don't know what the situation is with that actually.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to find out at least with how that goes. So I know there were some plays that you got to break down at least as well, Marcos. Wanted to see if we could spend some time going over with some of those, but we're going to get to that after halftime here on the Redbird Reboot podcast. We're going to shout out here to AZJ, so always joins in. Let's go. Good to have you in here. Robert Moore, 3088 as well, saying good evening, gents, for the most part. We've got Jackie, who's going to be airing with her next show at 7:30. You want to make sure that you keep an eye on Bird and Goal. That's coming up. We're going to be trying to, next week, have a co-show. That's going to be super exciting, at least, to be able to kind of put together our two shows. So we're going to have pretty much 2 hours worth of Cardinals football going over with kind of a combined multi-show with Bird and Goal and the Redbird Reboot podcast, which will be awesome. We've got Robert Moore talking about there needs to be accountability on the coaching staff for not adjusting in game. I think that's one of the biggest things that we saw was with Micah Parsons. He had 11 pressures against Arizona, the most of a Packers, pass rusher in the past decade per Next Gen Stats. That's from Jacob Morley's Twitter account as well. Micah Parsons was shocked that he didn't get double teamed as often as he did. That's something we talked about, Marcos, is a Drew Petzing problem. And of course, we've got the godfather himself of the Cardinal Rule YouTube channel, Joe Como, is in here as well, saying hello. So it's good to be able to have you guys in tow. Marcos, let's go ahead here and we'll switch to kind of going through a little bit of what we've been able to see with some of the plays that you've wanted to show us.
All right, good. You have it in. I was gonna say put it on mute because it does that ding, thanks to like the screen recorder that I have. This one right here, I posted it on Twitter for the people who've seen this already. I'm just reposting it because I want people to see what's wrong with this picture. Somebody pointed it out on Twitter right away. So if you just take a quick glance, you look at the defenders on the field, you'll be able to pick it out right away. And I'll explain why they went ahead and went with this play. So go ahead and tell me, Blake, do you see what's going on with this?
Yeah, quarters coverage, at least. It looks like Cardinals are rushing forward. They got 3 linebackers over the top, it looks like, at least, with the 2 safeties over at the top of the play there.
The linebackers is on the slot. You have you have a God, I can't always forget these names and whatnot. You have a linebacker on the slot cornerback, number 5. Can't believe I always forget the names and whatnot. The reason why this is the case, and this is something the Minnesota Vikings had an issue with when they had their old defensive coordinator before Brian Flores came over and took over, they would not check out of any type of play because they love running quarters coverage. We're seeing the same problem this year with our coverage and with our coaching staff because they don't want to send a blitz. They don't want to, if they do a blitz, they want to send a sim blitz, but they want to stay in quarters. They want to have their two deep safeties. They want to have the cornerbacks to the outside because they don't want to get beat deep. That type of mindset is only leading to situations like this where, let's just say they overload one side of the formation, which is exactly what they did. They put three guys on one side of the formation. I believe that they're going to rocket motion number 8, and he's going to stay on the same side of the formation. You have a tight end to the right side, to the boundary. So the field side has three receivers. What are you going to do? How are you going to defend that? Well, we're going to have to bump out one of our outside linebackers to get in coverage.
Yeah.
That's not a winning formula. And of course, what do you think is going to happen after this type of play? Well, something worse happened after this. So I don't know why it's not playing. Let's see. Is it playing on your end? Because it looks like it's just frozen on mine.
Yeah, it looks like it's frozen on your end if you wanted to go ahead and try to restart that at least as well. But yeah, right now I think the biggest factor, like you said, of just looking at the lack of adjustments from the offense and from the defense is something that we really are not appreciating when it comes to the Arizona Cardinals as far as being set in motion. Let me go ahead here with their play, and I'm going to switch this around so you guys can actually get to see
Rotate.
what that looks like here.
And then the outcome is pretty bad. Mac Wilson does something that is really ill advised on this play because you obviously have him on the strong side of the formation, the field side. He decides he's going to bail on his assignment and cover the intermediate middle, which is the hook zone area. But on this specific play, you have two wide receivers that are in the slot, in the inner slot, that could break in, run a quick hitch route, whatever it is. You don't bail on your assignment because your thought is like, okay, I'm the hook defender. We're gonna send 27 ADG to go blitz, where he's gonna go pick up whatever he's gonna pick up, maybe the running back. Of course, you see him on a green dog blitz.
Yeah.
He goes ahead and takes it because
That's just brutal. Like you said, lack of adjustment. Jordan Love just does a great job of making the changes, doing communication. Defense is just standing there. Like you said, there's not an adjustment that's coming in. Maybe some of it's the clock's running out. They don't have time. But like you said, they don't have any sort of quick adjustment to be able to hit. They can catch them. He's like, hey, look, we got Mac Wilson over in coverage. At least he kind of moves to the middle of the field, out of the way of Matthew Golden. Yep.
Yeah, he knows exactly. Once he saw Mac Wilson basically he bailed on his assignment, quote unquote. He knew he was wide open. All he had to do was just throw it to Matthew Golden, and it didn't matter that AGG came in on a blitz because he had somebody to be able to take care of him, which was the running back, to be able to pick him up on the blitzing and stuff. So this is a bad blitz call, bad design. Nobody's communicating here. No, like. It doesn't matter what the play call is. If you know you have three receivers to one side, you know you have to stay in coverage. You know you can't just bail to like hook drop or like zone drop or spot drop and then just let somebody get a quick reception. Why even be out there at that point? Like, why even play defense?
Yeah, it's a rough look, at least for the most part, with how this staff is. Definitely agree. Do you have any other plays at least you wanted to look at for the most part I know we'd broken down a little bit of the offensive side of the ball, some of the good stuff. Anything else you saw on the defense, at least, that what we've seen for the most part, Marcos, has been consistent. This defense ends up being good through the first 3 quarters. They'll still give up some yards. It's a bend but don't break philosophy. And in the fourth quarter, it breaks. It just is one of those places where the Cardinals get run over quite a bit, and it's not fun to watch, unfortunately.
Well, I think the clip that I wanted to put up was having issues. It was a really good play by Calais Campbell and Dadrian Taylor Demerson. We'll give it a shot. If it doesn't work, oh well. I mean, it's a play where you had Calais Campbell run down the running back from the back, from behind the formation. It's playing right now. Looks like it's fine so far. Okay, so I mean, this is disruptive as it gets when it comes to Calais Campbell being able to just beat his block. I think he beat guard trying to down block him, or maybe it was the center, runs right past him, but still has the ability to just like chase down like the running back, and that's what's beautiful about this. And of course, you had Dadrian Taylor Demerson. I believe he does a last second. Like he calls his own number on this one. He bails on whatever his assignment is, kind of reads out the play, thinks to himself, okay, they're trying to stretch to the outside. did you see how he just ran around all those blocks because he was able to read it. He thought to himself, they're running right on his right, their left towards the boundary side, strong side of the formation still. Hey, let me just get around all these blocks and then stop him in his tracks. And
Yep.
that was a great stop
Straight.
right there.
Fantastic stop right there, at least. I love being able to watch just some of this Cardinals team on the defense because we do see flashes of this being a top-notch defense. We've also seen flashes, at least, that the defense is just average at best because they give up some of those larger plays that we're able to see, at least in some of these clutch situations, which is speaking of some of those clutch situations, we're going to do a quick film study. This is going to be the end game scenario for the Arizona Cardinals. So we're going to look here at, I got to pull up, instead of your face being big, Marcos, this screen. This is going to be on the final drive of the Cardinals, first down. They have the handoff with the end around to Michael Carter. You're going to be set up, I believe, here at 2nd and 9, I think is where it's going to be set up for the next play. This is going to be the play, at least, that the Cardinals have an incomplete deep pass. This is the game play to Marvin Harrison Jr. that Jacoby misses. This is the one where you can see at least where you're talking about. Jacoby drops back. They fake it. Boom. Marvin Harrison Jr., he is open. Wide
Against
open.
cover 2 as well.
Against cover 2. This is the honey hole shot. This is exactly perfect. Where's Jacoby looking for the ball? He sees Marv. Guess what happens? He hesitates for a split second.
Can't miss those.
And he throws it back.
Late.
He just misses it. Throws it backwards, misses. He sees it. He throws it late. He just missed. And it's unfortunate, but this was one of those plays where it's like wide open, can't miss it. That was the game on the line there. You get that ball, you're still moving down the field. You are with a lead right now with, I believe it's by a field goal that the Cardinals have the lead. You can kick another field goal, force the Packers to have to go the length of the field with just seconds left. He just misses the throw. No one even in the area. It's unfortunate. Fortunately, you still get an opportunity. You still, at least in this spot, you get the ball. It's, I believe, now 3rd and 9, and Michael Wilson ends up getting an 8-yard catch. This is one of those like crucial, critical plays for the Arizona Cardinals. You see Michael Wilson runs upfield, turns back around, and then he just basically is able to just push for that extra yard to be able to get out of bounds off of a quick hitter. This puts you into 4th down territory, and it's 4th and probably 2. They call it 4th and 1, but it's 4th and a long 1. But you move him across, you see that he's in man coverage lined up. They get the ball, and then this is pretty easy. They're rushing 4, so he knows he can just take the underneath guy. Michael picks up as much as he can, gets flung around, but still, as we've seen, Michael Wilson, Zay Jones, they're making plays. The questions we've had about this receiver core, Marcos, hasn't quite been the same. Now, this is the play I think you would want back. It's pretty obvious to me, as soon as Jacoby crouches like this, he's bracing himself. You know they're going to be kind of looking for a quarterback sneak. I would have loved in this spot to call a timeout, make the Packers see what it looks like you're going to do, bring the team back out, and then be able to have 2 different plays and so where you could be able to decide whether you're handing the ball off or being able to do a tush push. Well, and instead, we get to see them that they rush it. They just do not get the push that they need, and they push Jacoby back.
Yeah, the reason why they thought that they can get away with this is because earlier in the game they did a tush push. No, not a tush push. They did a QB sneak and they got like a yard and a half or 2 yards off of it. So they thought it was going to be the same result, and it wasn't.
Yep. Packers just were able to make the plays up front, and now they take over in basically Cardinals territory, which is unfortunate because you had the opportunity. This is where John Gambadoro said I would punt, put them back there, have them to go the whole length of the field. I don't disagree necessarily. I think that you could, because you've got the lead at that point. You would be looking at, if the Packers drive down to be 20, 30 yards or so, they can get one play off and be able to kick a field goal to be able to get in. That would just tie the game, send it to overtime. It's a conservative call. I think I like the aggression of the Cardinals going for it. I said that I would have done the same thing, but I would have had a different play call. I would not have had Jacoby line up there acting like he's about to do the tush push, having the awareness, being able to have the option of being able to line up in the I formation, hand the ball off, and have your offensive line pick up a yard, or be able to have Jacoby on one of these naked bootlegs to be able to run around, pick up the first down with his legs, have something that's going to be potentially available. All of those would be great possibilities. Instead, what we get to see is the next couple of plays, Josh Jacobs goes and is able to pick up a couple of yards. And they just ground down the Cardinals, essentially, is basically what the Packers are able to do.
I wanna rant on the fourth down play. So if we get there,
Mm.
I ranted to you about like how they didn't make any adjustments on defense when it came to like defending the tight end. So when we get to that one, it's pretty egregious, and I'll explain to you why.
Yeah, so good play with Calais Campbell, tall Calais Campbell, consistently batting
Mhm.
down passes, which you always love to see. That's one of the things that I'm super excited about with Calais is just the ability that he has at 39 years old to still be able to get the awareness. He's getting double teamed. He just gets his hands up, knocks the ball down. Beautiful. This is
Both
just
hands.
classic Calais that we've seen.
It's like a volleyball spike. No, a
Exactly.
volleyball block.
Yeah.
I wonder. This is third down, right? So they do a
Yep.
pretty good job when it comes
So
to the first
yeah, so
first
third
three downs,
down,
of course.
they pick it up, and this is the one that was kind of the 8 yards or so that they picked up. They said that they called him down short. The Packers were going to kick a field goal originally to be able to tie the game. They ended up actually going for it. I think this was probably a first down that just wasn't called back because of where the contact was. They called him stopped there, and then they said that his knee came down, so they didn't mark him with the play. This is the Josh Jacobs play where actually I think this was actually the first down that they gave because this is going to be the 1st and 10. It was the next one where they were in field goal range was the 4th down play. So Josh Jacobs runs up the middle for 5 yards. And then the 2nd down ensuing play, you end up with it was Darius Robinson was on the tackle for that one there. I had another play with Josh Jacobs for 4 yards. This was another play which watch Darius at the bottom of the screen. We did get to see something from him this game, is like we had talked about. He is getting kind of pushed. He gets off, is able to make the tackle right in front of Mac Wilson, Jalen Thompson, and Buda Baker. He gets there first. What we've seen with Darius has been a lot of similar to, unfortunately, some plays like this. So he's got one person, the tight end is just kind of pushing him, but he's able to at least shed and get through there. Showing up on the stat sheet, at least, that he's not had the upper body strength that we wanted to for someone to be able to anchor on the edge is the biggest takeaway that I've had from Darius Robinson. You see, instead what happens, you put Dante Stills out there instead on the rotation on that side. And now look what happens there. You're able to get a great play with Jalen Thompson with the Cardinals. They kind of are able to lull the Packers in. So you take a look at where Jalen starts the play and look at where he ends the play. So they bring him there on a blitz in run defense. This is pretty easily, they just bring everyone up at the line. He just does a good job of getting around 85, which is, I believe Tucker Kraft is 85. He gets around him, is able to
Yeah.
get that loss on the play. And that's a great play because now it is 3rd down or 4th down, excuse me. And the Packers tried out the field goal unit. They stop, they go back. And then we get this play, Marcos, the one that we've talked about, the game ender as it was for the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, they got a 3-by-1 formation, the bunch formation at the very top. This is where like I get really pissed off when it comes to like not understanding what your players are or what their specialty is and whatnot. DTD, he's pretty good in coverage, but when you saw them, they kind of shifted around and they knew the matchup was going to be DTD versus Tucker Kraft. Now it's 4th down. So was that unfair? Yes, it was unfair. He pushed off. It was a clear pass interference for some reason. We never get those calls as Cardinals fans. We've seen this happen way too many times. But they had nothing to lose. It was 4th down anyway. So why not come up with a risk? If it doesn't get called, you get the conversion. If it does, then like, hey, we were on 4th down territory anyway. He pushes off because he knows that he has that one-on-one versus a 5'10" like safety that is undersized, and you have a 6 foot, I would believe what is a 6'4", 6'5" tight end that's about 250 pounds. He's just gonna manhandle him, and we don't have anybody that can defend him to the outside. We don't have a linebacker that can defend him. We don't have somebody with girth and size to be able to push off of him as well. So they put him out to dry, and it's sad because this was the play that pretty much won them the game.
Yeah, this is what I think I would agree with this. This is a scheme issue just as much as a personnel issue. Part of why the Cardinals even took an Isaiah Simmons and have a guy that you can have as a larger safety is to cover guys like a Tucker Kraft who has that size and athleticism. Like you said, he gets beat, gets shoved off. It's not necessarily fair, but it's one of the places of when you talk about this Cardinals personnel of having the 2 pass rushers in Browning and Sweat, they've got their top 2 guys in there. You got Calais, you got Dalvin Tomlinson up the middle in case they try to run it on the 4th and 2. And you've got your linebacker lined up over the top just to be able to read what goes on with Jacobs. It's pretty clear that they're going to be passing it as soon as the ball gets snapped. You can kind of tell that they're going to be throwing it on 4th down. This is the sort of aggression and sort of play call I think the Arizona Cardinals should honestly have looked at doing on their 4th and 2 themselves. you've got Trey McBride. You know that the Packers, you can probably be able to draw up getting one of those linebackers to cover him instead of running the ball up the middle. Get Trey McBride or Marvin Harrison Jr., kind of bring them in, get one of those mismatches. The Packers, they're a well-coached team. Overall, have been a well-coached franchise. Cardinals are also not able to get home with the pass rush. You see Dalvin Tomlinson lined up here. They do a good job ultimately of being able to pick up Calais. Because they shove him right into with Josh Sweat. They kind of do a little bit of a chip block, move Sweat into it. He ends up trying to go around in case Jordan Love's going to take off. So that's kind of how the design is. This is one of those reps where you just have to, if you're going to be Dalvin Tomlinson, have to be able to push your man back and be able to get in the way of the throw. And the Packers just make it super simple, super easy, get the conversion, and they go on to score the touchdown from there. And that is it for the Cardinals. They end up with that Hail Mary attempt at the end of the game like we had talked about. And I'll show a little bit at least of that here for you guys, just because it is something that I was kind of a little bit, I would say, surprised by, was just the way that the game management was handled with that 2nd and 19, I think that they had. So let's go through with, this will be the last that we'll do for our film study today. It says no videos available for this play. I know this one didn't load here. So perks of live podcasting for you guys watching on our video. But I think what a lot of people want to know, Marcos, is the future. Like, do they need to fire this team? Is it something, or fire this coaching staff? Is it that this team is bad? I think what we've seen, Marcos, is this is a talented team that's up there with other NFL teams, because this is a team that went up with the Green Bay Packers with Micah Parsons, with that offense. Are they a Super Bowl winning caliber team? I don't know if they're good enough on the offensive side to get there. I think defensively with Micah Parsons, they're definitely a threat. And I think that it's one of those places where you went up there and for 3 quarters, you were essentially in control of the game. You did give up a little bit with kicking the ball back and letting the Packers be able to get that last field goal, but by not kicking the ball into the kick zone at the end of the game scenario. But at the end of the day, it's not that this is, I think, a bad team. It's just that when this team gets into some of these clutch situations on 4th down, gets into these spots where they're driving down to have to get a touchdown, needing to be able to avoid just throwing the ball up for a Hail Mary, using your timeouts, they're not very well managed. The game management is off. The play calling is a bit off. And like you said, on the defensive side, there's just not enough adjustments that are being able to be made in game. At the end of the day, it's where teams seem to understand and know this Cardinals team through the first 3 quarters is going to play well, and they're not going to adjust or change like they need to in the 4th quarter. The other teams, they're just waiting for the 4th quarter. They're punching the Cardinals in the face. They're adjusting and going out and knowing that they can get the win. And no Cardinals players, for that matter, have stepped up and been able to make plays. So I don't think it goes as much as a coaching issue, so much as I think it's a coaching, and just none of these guys are making the same plays that we saw to begin the season. It's where I think, Marcos, that like we've talked a little bit about, do the Cardinals need to have a bit of a reset? And I think that that's something that we're probably going to have to agree that they need to do a slight reset in order to continue with this franchise moving toward how to win games. Because right now, they look like they just know how to lose games.
Yeah, they definitely need to have some sort of a reset. They do not have the experience, unfortunately, to be able to like pull out these games in a consistent manner or make the right decision. And we've seen them do it time and time again, where the decision that we think in our minds, like, why'd you do that? They do it, and we're thinking in our own minds as fans, like, why did you do that? Why didn't you call a timeout? Why didn't you run the ball? Why didn't you try to go for it and call a different play? Why did on defense did Tucker Kraft go off on us and continuously keep getting first downs? Did they forget that guy is like their go-to guy on offense? That's why you get a tight end that's as good as that, because you have a guy that can get you he's a first down machine. Well, they went to their first down machine, nothing was done. There was no adjustments. There was nothing. Maybe they thought to themselves, we don't have anybody good enough to be able to cover. Maybe we're just going to give up on that. Well, then double team him. Team him on that last play. Call cover 1, double 85. And you know what? Like, hey, we're going to take away your best piece. Go to somebody else. We have confidence that our defensive backs can cover your wide receivers, but we're not going to let you have Tucker Kraft. No, just...
Yeah, Tucker Kraft and Josh Jacobs were the two, and it's maddening, like you said, super frustrating. And it's just frustrating if you're a Cardinals fan. You've lost 5 games straight. People have started to talk ultimately about the question of, is Jonathan Gannon going to be back? And I think that we're going to see the Cardinals are going to have a nationally televised game in Jerry World with Kyler Murray most likely going to get the ball back. And we've seen Kyler has not lost in that stadium, Marcos. I think if Kyler Murray and the Cardinals go back out against this Clayton Adams and what we've seen with the Cowboys, there's a nice little chart, at least for the most part, that was pulled
Oh
up
yeah.
by earlier today that showed at least who's the best offenses and the best defenses in the NFL. And the answer, at least, is that the impact that Clayton Adams has had on the Dallas Cowboys has been huge. So as far as combined yards per game and points per game, best offense and worst defense is the Dallas Cowboys. Arizona Cardinals, middle of the pack, below the pack. They're up there with a injured team like the Chiefs, with a rough team like the Saints and then the Vikings. And then a little bit close to them is the New England Patriots, who have been effective on defense. But at the end of the day, you want to be in this part of the graph where you're a elite offense and a really good defense. You want to be in that upper part. Cardinals have not been too far away from there. It's like there's a couple of plays per game that you wish you could take back. And the fact that they have not been able to is something where I think we need to be able to very harshly look at this Cardinals team. They have an extra week of practice, extra week to get healthy. They need to go out, put up points on the Dallas Cowboys, and recognize that their defense is going to have to get a play or two to be able to stop them, because if they continue this slide, it is not good looking as far as their upcoming schedule, Marcos, because you cannot lose 6 straight games and then come out of the bye and lose another game for a nationally televised audience. People are going to question, wow, Jonathan Gannon's walking into the building on Monday morning. Why is that happening? It's just something that's frustrating as a Cardinals fan to feel like that there is a good opportunity for the Cardinals to stop the slide, have Kyler Murray come back, be able to lead this team. And I think that's the sort of leadership that Kyler Murray needs to be able to show if we're going to be able to recognize that right now it feels like the experiment is over. Go out and prove that it's not Kyler, and then go out and prove that, hey, I can still play. I'm still a franchise quarterback who's under contract for this team. I can win this team to a spot where you're going to want me back again next year. I think it starts with the Dallas Cowboys. It is the best possible opportunity for Kyler to be able to make himself known. Or if he struggles, if he ends up turning the ball over, if there's other issues, and the Cowboys walk away there with a win, and the Cardinals look like their offense looked in the first 5 games that Kyler Murray played, that feels like it would be the nail in the coffin for him as the franchise quarterback in Arizona, in my opinion.
Well, the thing is, like, everything should be set for him to have a good game because of the fact that he's going up against a really bad defense. He has the ability. He has not the ability. He's had the great games over in in that stadium and whatnot. That's his home. That we all know that he's a Texas proud player and whatnot. He wants to show out in front of his crowd. I guarantee you his family's gonna is gonna show up to that game, probably his friends and whatnot. So he's got the pride that's gonna follow with it. And then he has a defense that's not a top-notch defense that he's going up against. So
Yep.
there's no excuses. If he cannot throw deep consistently against his team, if we're seeing the same situation where he's dropping back, he's checking it down, we're not moving the ball effectively and whatnot, at this point it's just like, okay, well then something's definitely wrong, or something's very off with either he's hiding an injury, or he just can't have the confidence to throw downfield without being worried about throwing an interception and whatnot. But he has to let it fly. It's like, take the chance, man, because at this point, if your back is against the wall, Brissett has nothing to lose. And Brissett has showed out. He's shown out that, hey, I'm the backup. Well, I have no business even trying to show out. And he's throwing these deep balls, and you're thinking to yourself, well, there it is. There's deep balls. So there's no excuse for Kyler. If he comes back and it looks good, then great. If it doesn't, then you know what? It's like he can't blame anybody but himself.
Yeah, and that's something, at least with Jonathan Gannon, why we've talked about him, is he even talked about everything with the Micah Parsons plan. He said that he didn't have an issue with the plan in place, and said, do we need to have a better job against elite pass rushers? Probably, yeah. Well, you're like,
Yes.
So did you like the plan in place, or did you need a better plan? And I think that it's the sort of I think it was mentioned on the radio that the way that Jonathan Gannon has started to talk is that you can tell he's starting to question a lot of his philosophy, because he will say, hey, we can't double him. We're not going to question the philosophy. And then at the same time, they're losing games and people are pointing out obvious ways they're losing games. And he's like, well, yeah, you might be right. That's the sort of issue I think that we've seen, is that there probably is not the same capability in place. Cardinals have really struggled against teams with a winning record. When they play the Dallas Cowboys next week, or I should say the week after, guess what, Marcos? That team, second in the NFC East, has a winning record. If they drop that game, I think that all all hell's going to break loose when it comes to this staff, Jonathan Gannon. Everyone's job is going to be on the line. It's going to turn into a bit of desperation, and that's something that you do not want to have if you're a Cardinals fan, because if you go out and then you have 2 games against the Seahawks and then the 49ers, you're after the trade deadline, people are going to be calling for you to trade Calais to another contender, get rid of Buddha. People are going to call out for a lot of that. And that's going to make your team fundamentally worse. That continues your slide. That's really going to sink, I think, a lot of the chances for this coaching staff to be able to actually continue building some of their culture. It really goes without saying that the game after the bye week is probably one of the most important games in Arizona Cardinals history, because I don't think it will completely determine whether this coaching staff, quarterback, whoever stays in place. But I think by the end of that game, we will know, does this team have a spine? Or is this team about to hit the reset button? Guys are already booking their flights to Cabo at the end of the season, and they're just effectively, the season is going to be over with that loss to Dallas. A win would go a huge way in not just breaking the slide, but getting some positive momentum, because you could look at the rest of the schedule and say Seahawks are at 5-2, Niners are at 5-2. Hey, guess what? If you go out and beat the Seahawks, you go out and beat the Niners, suddenly your franchise is back at 5-5 after you beat those 2 teams and beat the Cowboys. If you can win 3 in a row, you're right back in it for the overall playoff spot with games to go against the Los Angeles Rams. You would then just be waiting for one of those teams to slip up. There is still opportunity, but it does feel like to most Cardinals fans after watching this 5-game slid, all of that is quickly slipping away from this team.
Yeah, it's a monumental uptaking. Is it possible? Yes, theoretically they can go ahead and get on a winning streak and then stop the slide and then get back to gear after the bye week. Unfortunately, after the bye week, they usually tend to play the worst football. Let's see if they can change that, because this is mid-season and they're not even halfway through the season with the bye. So that's the reason why this is different than past years, where it's after halfway through the season they get their bye and then they come back and they start playing. They kind of take a deep a dive at that point. So is it possible? Yes, it's possible for them to be able to get themselves out of the slide. I don't want a half measure. So if they're gonna go on a winning streak, let's make sure we go into the playoffs and not be a team that wins 8 games again or 9 games and doesn't make the playoffs, because then we put ourselves in a worse spot to be able to select the draft picks that we need to select in the upcoming draft.
Absolutely. We'll be talking more about some of those areas with the draft picks. As of right now, the Cardinals have a high percentage chance of landing a top 10 pick. ESPN's projecting them with the 7th overall pick, which is something where if we're already talking about draft picks and we're not even halfway through the season, that things are unfortunate for the Arizona Cardinals. But that's just, you have to look at the reality of the situation. If you're Arizona at 2-5 right now, they're picking 9th. When you're looking at the players and the availability for those guys who are going to be in there, there's a new favorite for the number 1 overall pick. The new favorite for the number 1 overall pick is Alabama's Ty Simpson is the guy who's the favorite for the number 1 overall pick. Right now, the leftover guys that you're going to see here, some of the top talents: Fernando Mendoza. You've got Caleb Downs, who's that next top 5 safety who's been making plays all over the field, is probably going to be the closest thing that we've seen to, I want to say, the Chargers safety, Derwin James. Derwin James is the one. Yeah, that's the one who's the closest to. Then also Dante Moore is probably the second quarterback who's going to be set up. And then, as we've talked about already too, there's a few more quarterbacks that are mentioned. Lenora Sellers has been one of the guys who's been there. We already talked about Ty Simpson. John Mateer is a gunslinger at 6'1", although he had some turnover issues. If the Cardinals are not able to get a top quarterback, there's going to be guys like Spencer Fano and the other offensive tackle. I believe his name is Caleb Lomu out of Utah. Those are 2 other guys that are going to be there. I don't see the Cardinals taking an edge rusher this year. The other name, at least, that pops up, and I'll leave this one to you, Marcos, at least, to see how you feel about it. How would you feel if the Cardinals were to let Michael Wilson walk, let Zay Jones walk, bring in Jordan Tyson to be able to have with Jacoby Brissett, to have this deep passing game that we've seen be able to kind of take on a new level? I don't see that happening, unfortunately, because I think that you're talking about Micah Parsons beating your right tackle, neither of whom are under contract for next year. Christian Jones, we've seen him play a couple of snaps. I think that in this scenario, if you're not one of those teams that's going to be saying, hey, we're going to be going out and getting a quarterback, trading up for one, whatever, we can talk more about that potential here. You're going to be one of those teams that's going to be taking one of those offensive tackles, and that's going to be your starter for the foreseeable future at right tackle, just like
Yeah.
Paris Johnson was your starter at left tackle.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the path we're going to have to go because of the fact that we don't have that other bookend tackle. I would say just draft him early. I'm not sure if I want to draft him in the first round, but I'm not going to go ahead and fight and be against a first round tackle being taken in this year's draft. Yes, Jordan Tyson would be a dream to have him paired up with Marvin Harrison Jr. But I really, really like Michael Wilson, and unfortunately, because of the fact that he hasn't gotten the opportunity to be able to shine as that number 2 receiver. He has a really good ability to be able to get up and be physical and get the ball. Not only that, but they use him in a lot of the run game. He's a chipper, so he likes to knock these defensive ends on their butts and everything. So he is a physical guy. I would much rather just keep him instead of trying to, draft another top, wide receiver.
Yeah, the guy who's probably the future of the number 1 overall pick at 6'3", 275, Ruben Bain, has looked like a phenomenal player out of there in Miami as well. So, yeah, guys, the last couple of comments that we have at least come from AZ Jace. Talked about the miss by Jacoby, led to that 4th down sneak fail. That was the one we talked about, the 2nd and 9 that Marvin Harrison Jr., where Jacoby just completely missed him. Jace also talks about firing the staff, and we'll see, AZ Jace. Like, that's something that we may end up having to talk about. That I think that the noise is already pretty loud in Arizona. It's only going to get louder if the Cardinals come out of this bye week and have another loss, making it 6 in a row. We'll be here to talk more about that. We've got some guests that are coming in next week, like we talked about, as well as kind of a roundtable podcast for a state of the Cardinals. Super excited for all of that. Last comment, at least from Silverwolf, wants to keep Michael Wilson at all costs. My mother would agree with you there, Silverwolf. She is a huge Michael Wilson fan. She never loves the number 1 receivers for the Cardinals. She always loves either the wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3. So Michael's just a big upgrade over Andy Isabella. That's all I'm going to be saying there. But yeah, that's going to wrap it up here for us with the Redbird Reboot podcast. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in on X. Make sure you're subscribing to the Cardinal Rule on YouTube. We're going to be doing some stuff at least to try to make sure we get some more subscribers set up for you guys there on the YouTube channel. We're going to be back here again next week. We're going to be back on most Mondays. We may do a Tuesday show next week, but for the most part, you'll find us Mondays and Wednesdays. Wednesdays at 6:15. We've got Bird and Goal coming up next. Yep. Guys, we're done over now. That's overtime for the most part. Everyone stay safe as well. Thank you, Silverwolf. That is totally in agreement with you there. We're going to log off for now, and that's going to be our time for us to shut down. We'll be back next week with the guests that we mentioned and a hopeful win for the Arizona Cardinals. Stay safe over the bye week, everyone. Right. Deuces out. This has been the Redbird Reboot podcast.
All right. Go ahead and jump on to the Bird and Goal.
Absolutely. Go and see Bird and Goal next, guys.